everybody. Welcome to season 25, episode 3 of the Atheist Experience. It's so wild. Season 25, and like 15 or more of those I've been involved in. Welcome. We are live. Today is Sunday, January 17th, 2021. This is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism, separation of religion and government. You can find out more about the ACA at atheist-community.org. I'm here to make announcements, I guess, to start with. So if you look directly up above the chat, there's a little like a donate button. And as always, 100%, well, as almost always, because we were raising money for Black non-believers, but 100% of your donations go directly to the ACA. Neither Google nor YouTube or anybody else takes any cut of that. It's one of the best ways to support the organization, but there are a number of other ways to support us as well, including merchandise that's available at bit.ly/AEN merch. And you can become a member here at YouTube, which will get you special icons and badges next to your name and things like that. And you can support us at patreon.com/the Atheist Experience. We have a couple of Facebook pages that we've been promoting for a while to direct people towards. I'm going to tell you both of them, even though technically I'm only supposed to tell you about one, because there's the Atheist Experience fan group, and then there's the Atheist Experience private fan group, which is like super secret. I can't even believe we have a graphic and have been announcing it every week. But
after dark,
yeah. That reminds me is that in between Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience on Sundays, we air the latest episode of the Nonprofits at 3 p.m. And speaking of nonprofits, well, one host, producer, just member extraordinaire there with Nonprofits, John Angel, is joining us here today. How you doing, man?
I am all right. Yes. You might have just seen an episode of the Nonprofits with Malty and Neil and Puck, and it was pretty good. I caught a little bit of it. And we're on every week in between Talk Heathen and AXP, talking about current events, social issues. Got a good crew of nonprofits, and interesting conversations are had. And we're having more fun as the weeks go on, as we become more and more familiar with each other, even though very few of us have actually met each other in person because of this delightful coronavirus disaster that we're living through.
In-person meetings are vastly overrated right now. But
yeah,
I will say that in addition to catching up with nonprofits, if you did not catch Talk Heathen earlier today, you should go back and watch it, because V was joined by Katie Montgomery, a friend of ours across the pond. I've done an episode of The Line with her. You'll probably see more of her around. It was just an outstanding show. And so we are trying to live up to their standard today, Johnny. So the ball's in our court.
We're having a Zen off. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there.
Okay.
Which one of us loses are cool. It's going to be me, because I don't lose.
Okay.
So I'm going to develop like an ulcer maybe, but you won't read it on my face.
You're going to be the loseriest loser of all losers by the time this show is over.
Am I going to get so tired of losing that I'm going to start winning?
Yes, that might actually be the case.
All right.
But in addition to us, the whole reason that we're able to do this show, we have the best crew, tech and otherwise, that you could ever hope for. There they are, screening calls, looking at video stuff to make sure that they put themselves on the screen along with a cat. More cats. The more cats we have in the background, the better. So the rest of you who are not holding your cat right now, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I guess you're just awesome crew. And on that note, did you have anything in particular that you wanted to talk about? I mean, you can mention what's been going on in nonprofits more specifically. Like, what was the primary issue you guys talked about this week?
This week we talked about the nonsense down in the Capitol, and the attempt at a coup, the civil unrest, the righteous protest of the disenfranchised. However, some people might want to phrase it that way.
Yeah.
Talked about the Proud Boys and Parler and people getting deplatformed. There's just so much in the news. It's hard to really do anything justice. We record on Wednesdays. Of course, the show goes out on Sunday. So when we recorded it, we had up-to-date information. And I hope that the news cycle is going to slow down now that some things will be changing on the 20th. I'm very concerned about intermittent violence.
Yeah.
And I'm not predicting anything. I think that the FBI has made note that There are armed protests scheduled across this nation, and I just hope that they can get that under control. What the thought that I had today was, what is the end game for those who would violently overthrow the legitimate election? That we're just going to be okay. We're just going to stick with this appointed leader as opposed to the elected leader. Okay, we're just going to be quiet. What is the end game? What does that even look like into the mind of the conspiracy theory folks who are trying to make this happen? And I can't wrap my head around it.
That's because they haven't wrapped their head around it either. They don't have an end game. They're just kind of reacting. But I will point out that for those who tune in this Wednesday, I had this down as a note to do at the end, but who knows what's going to happen between now and the end of the show. On Wednesday, Joe Biden will be inaugurated as president of the United States. On Wednesday evening, I'll be doing an episode of the Hang Up with Andrew Seidel, who's kind of been with me through a good chunk of this since RBG died and the other things. And we talk more about politics there. But setting aside the political aspect of it, it's important to note that this time that we're going through is unique. Not just because of the pandemic, not just because of the election, the attempted coup, all of these other things. It is unique in every regard. We are in a position where we need to rebuild, where one portion of the population is talking about unity and another portion of the population is saying, no, you don't get to have unity without accountability. Once we have accountability, there'll be unity. Why is it you want unity now? You didn't, kind of like the fuck your feelings group for several years. There's a lot of fighting going on, and I have been on the forefront of drawing lines of saying, this far and no further. I don't want to have anything to do with so-and-so or people who are in this group or whatever else. We have a lot of work to do repairing, but that requires that we actually stand up for the Constitution and the law. A couple of weeks ago, members of Congress were hiding under a table as violent insurrectionists came in to attempt a coup. Doesn't matter what their ultimate plan was. It doesn't matter that they were U.S. citizens. If this had happened differently, and I said, hey, last night, 20 people broke into the Capitol and they ransacked the place and they stole some stuff and they sat in desks and took pictures and they marched around with the Confederate flag and all these things, or a foreign flag, every American would be up in arms. It's just the fact that the United States is nearly precisely divided between who wants to participate in the system and who doesn't. And of those who participate, we're divided between Democrat, Republican, or, whatever it is. Please, I don't know why there's going to be a public inauguration at the Capitol. I'm already disappointed in the new president-elect for not simply coming out and saying, everybody stay home. We don't need to have a big party in the middle of a pandemic at the nation's capital in order to swear me in. I can be sworn in right here in the halls of Congress and get right to work. And that is what I think should be done, but I'm not running anything. And so I'll say to the people out there that while this wasn't a completely planned rant, please take care of yourself and stay home. You don't need to go to experiences. You will enjoy it just as much on Zoom, probably more, without the cold, without the threats, without the risk to your health. Stay home. Hang out with us. I'll be doing something. But anyway, that wasn't how we were supposed to start off the show today.
No.
But you ready to get to some calls?
I am.
Sweet. I want to take this one first. Welcome back to the show, Murri. It's so good to talk to you again. How you doing?
Hi. I'm not sure.
Well, how can we help?
When we talked last, my son had said, "Congratulations that you lost your faith."
Yeah.
Then last week I got hit with a pretty big one. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Oh my gosh.
And a part of me want to run back to the church, but in my heart I know it wasn't real.
What do you think the church can do for you that makes it appealing? I mean, first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about your diagnosis, but and that you're open enough to talk about this. I just want to know from your perspective what's going in your head that you that you think the church or religion, either one, whichever one you were primarily focused on, could do for you, given in this situation and time of need?
Oh, comfort, knowing that someone had my back, knowing that by his stripes we were healed, and all that kind of stuff.
See, I'm halfway with you, Murri, because I can so religions are really good at providing comfort, both real comfort in the sense of, hey, we're a community, we're going to provide some food, we're going to offer you some counseling and a hug and all these warm things, but also the fictional comfort, which to me, when I asked you what you were looking for, you went right to what I would consider to be the fictional comfort. So it's not so much that you're looking for a community of carers. It seems that you are worried that you could slip back into the notion that you are the special, loved, and protected creation of God.
But if I did that, I would know deep in my heart that it wasn't true. I've spent too much time studying about, atheism and going online and reading books to know that no matter, I'd just be pretending.
The first thing you said was the community, wasn't it? The first thing that you wanted to run back to was the feeling protected, the community aspect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I wasn't alone.
Yeah. It's especially difficult in these times when we're all socially distanced and it seems that the groups that are gathering together physically tend to be more religious groups nowadays and not secular groups. They tend to be staying further apart, I think. Have you looked into some place in your community that is a secular organization that maybe has regular meetings, virtual meetups or distance meetups, so that you know that you're not alone, but you're not stepping back into this environment where they're going to want to bring you back into the fold? Have you looked into anything like that?
No, not yet. I just got the diagnosis, and there's a lot of support groups for Parkinson's, but I'm still in the really early stages, and I'm afraid to go to those to see what my future is going to be.
Oh yeah, Murri, let me tell you.
So
I can completely understand that. I don't know of any health issue that I have that is as serious as your diagnosis. But for example, I've got type 2 diabetes, and when I see someone on TV who lost a foot due to this, it's like a stark reminder of what could be. So I can at least empathize a little bit.
Yeah.
But and while I don't think anybody should be going to any social gatherings in the midst of the pandemic, some online groups that are supporting it, give yourself some time to come to grips with your diagnosis and how you feel with it and how you're going to do it moving forward. If it's just within the last week, you don't need to pick a support group today, and you don't need to worry about looking into your future today. You need to kind of resonate, let the diagnosis resonate so that you can truly understand how you feel with it before other people try to tell you how you could feel. Sorry?
I said I still feel pretty numb.
Yeah.
It's pretty fresh.
And
it's pretty fresh. I don't want to be Mr. Sunshine on this, but support groups for conditions like that are not necessarily places where it's doom and gloom. People live, people survive, they persevere through these conditions, they live with it. They're not dying with it, they're living with these conditions. And when you're ready to join a group like that, I would hope that group has a special focus on, hey, we're living our lives. Yes, we have this condition, but there's plenty of life left to be had. But there have got to be some online organizations that can help you with that. And also, if you want to stay away from the Parkinson's community because you're not ready for that, try to find secular community and some other interest that you might have, whether it's some sort of some fan group that you have or something like that, where you're meeting with people, you're talking with people about interests. And if there's ways for you to do volunteering remotely or something like that, something to get you immersed in a community, even though you can't be physically immersed in that community, can help you not feel so alone if you're working together for something that you believe is important.
You might also look at the Secular Therapist Project, because someone generally versed in therapy can ask you the right questions. Like right now, the question I want to ask you more than anything is, Murri, what is it that you'd most likely like to do moving forward? What's your priority?
Well, I wrote a trilogy, and I'd like to see it published.
I wish I'd written the first part of a trilogy, so you're already well ahead of me. I would say that sounds like not only a worthy goal, but also a suitable distraction. That doesn't mean you're hiding from anything, but it allows you to focus your brain on something else so that you're not obsessing on the worst aspect at any given time. And then as you become more comfortable moving forward, I think those are, you should do what you want to do. And so I'm fully supportive. If I were you, maybe even start like some sort of GoFundMe for self-publishing if you're not able to find a publisher elsewhere. If that's the thing that's most important to you and it popped out of your mouth so quick, I want to encourage you to go do it. And then as you find you need help and support, I want you to reach out for that help and support too.
Yeah, Murri, remember, you're more than just this diagnosis. You're more than just some person that has left a religious group. Well, now we know a few things. You're an author, right? So when certain aspects of life become more difficult, we shift our weight to other things that we're more interested in. They give us more meaning. So lean on that a little bit, right? You wrote a trilogy. Maybe you have more. Are you still writing? Or have you taken a little bit of a break? Are you still writing?
I haven't written for a little while now. Told my children all about this Brittany Bat and Jared Dribble character, and now I'm starting to put those down on paper. There was a stories that their names were Brittany and Jared, and I made the characters on our ranch, and so I've been starting to write them again.
Somebody in chat, by the way, also suggested perhaps instead of GoFundMe, you could start a Patreon account, and you could virtually publish your own books there in chapters that people subscribe to. I would encourage you to pursue all of it, because you've already. Let's be honest, Murri. You and I both know that the likelihood that you're just going to fall back into belief is vanishingly small. You've already acknowledged that even if you did it, you would do it knowing that it wasn't honest. And so I'm just going to encourage you to be you and be honest, and to get the support you need, hopefully, whether it's directly related to a Parkinson's diagnosis or just, you as a person, because as Johnny pointed out, you are not just that diagnosis. That's just a tiny part. So I tell you this, Murri, I don't know when the next convention is going to be, but since you and I worked out a deal for a previous convention, let's work on you touching base with me a couple times between now and the next convention, and maybe we can hang out again.
Okay, I would like that. You were very kind.
Thank you. I enjoyed meeting you. Please work on your books and all the things that you enjoy, and keep us posted on your progress. You could be another inspiring story. I have friends like Dave Warnock, who's dealing with a terminal diagnosis, and there are others. Someday you may be the person who's running a Parkinson's help group. And I'd like to point out that the thing that you're probably most scared of about, hey, seeing what may be down the pipeline and other things, I guarantee you that any group that's been around for a while has dealt with people who have those same fears, and they should probably be pretty good at introducing you to the group and alleviating some of those fears. They are the experts, and you will become an expert too. And what you do with that in order to help other people coming down with this diagnosis, I'm looking forward to that sort of kind of sea change of encouraging people by talking about your lived experience.
Okay, so I'll check in with you the next 12 months.
Whenever you want, whenever there's an update, Murri, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go get it, Murri.
Please be safe. Let's see. I'm just kind of taking them in order because I want to kind of move along. But Murri, that was so good. You know, she had called in before, and we got to meet up at a convention, so it was nice. And we have Austin in Washington, who has something that's I don't know. Austin, are you claiming that you have something more reliable than scientific methods?
Hi. Just two quick things. I just wanted to say that the hold music before the show started, whoever's curating that, fantastic job. Playing the solo from Hot for Teacher before the show started got me totally hyped.
That'd be Vern,
and
the Lord of Levels, I believe.
Yeah, the call screeners are doing a fantastic job. Always a pleasure to talk to them. So this all kind of originated out of a discussion I had with a missionary friend that works in South America, and basically the idea is the scientific method the best way to get to truth? And as part of that, how do we evaluate whether things are more true or less true? And I can kind of give further insight into that, but that's kind of what I'm trying to talk about.
I think I kind of understand what you're getting at. For me, something's either true or it's not. So when we talk about more or less true, what we're really saying is how we have an internal model or a proposed model, a claim about how reality works, and we're trying to figure out how accurate our model is with respect to the actual facts of the universe. And so, as far as I'm aware, the scientific methods, this examination of evidence using critical thinking, the best test methodologies, and submitting it to others for peer review, I have yet to see anyone demonstrate any more consistently reliable path to understanding reality. So if you have one, I'd be happy to know it.
So here's my problem. And I like to think that I'm a fairly scientifically minded person. And where this came to a head for me was the way that I'm evaluating the usefulness of the scientific method in determining truth is that I'm using the scientific method to determine whether the scientific method is reliable or not. So
you're not.
That's where my hang-up is.
There's another hang-up there, and that is that science doesn't proclaim to be stating what the truth is. Science is merely giving the best explanations that we currently have, which are all subject to revision. It's all tentative. So science isn't making proclamation about truth, which is ironic, because as far as I can tell, there's nothing that's going to get you closer to truth than science. But the methods that you're using, to me, would we at least agree, Austin, that truth is that which demonstrably comports with reality?
I would agree. I would say that there are values to truth, or there are ways of looking at truth in like, why does truth matter, and that ties into that.
I don't really
in saying that.
Sorry, I don't really see that. I've been asked this question: why does truth matter? I've been asked this question several times in the last few weeks on this show, and it's a question that confuses me, because I can't imagine anybody who could make a case for that truth doesn't matter. Now, what we could say is that we don't have access to truth. We don't have pure access to capital T truth. We don't have a way to demonstrate pure T truth. But what I was asking is, if you have something that is more reliable, more consistently reliable than science, what is it, and how did you determine that it's more reliable?
Okay, so the model of determining truth that I personally subscribe to, and that I find is most effective in my life, is that basically if you took a consensus on any particular topic and you included the largest possible sample size of opinions on that matter, that inevitable point that you would get to would be the capital capital T truth that we're all looking for.
Except,
so, if a Buddhist monk is sensing
Awesome.
some kind of like oneness for everyone, then that is a part of a larger truth.
so
Does that
the
make sense?
the problem, Austin, is that we know and can demonstrate that your method is flawed, because at some point in history, the
But
consensus
aren't
was,
you using the scientific method to demonstrate that?
if I'd finished my sentence, I'd be able to point this out to you. At some point, the consensus view of everyone on the planet was wrong about something, correct?
I could conceive of that, yeah.
You don't have to conceive of it. Was it the consensus view at some point that the sun orbited the earth?
I mean, the majority opinion. I'm talking like every single
Hang on,
mind in existence.
Austin.
Okay.
Austin, you proposed something that used the word consensus, and now when I ask you about it, you're talking about majority opinion. How are those? All I'm saying is, haven't most people believed? Hasn't it been the case that the consensus opinion of people has been wrong at many points throughout history? Not conceptually, but demonstrably, like about the movement of planetary bodies, about where disease comes from, about mental health issues. All of these things, the consensus view has been wrong about, right?
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so how is that better than scientific methods if the method that you're proposing is one where we know it can be wrong, and really all you're saying is, I'm going to take everybody's opinion into account and go with the wisdom of the crowd. Now, I agree that we've demonstrated the wisdom of the crowd for, like, here's a jar full of gumballs, have everybody guess how many are in there. You average it out, you will get shockingly close, because that's about how reasonable we are towards position. But the madness of crowd doesn't work when we're talking about, is there a God? Doesn't work when we talk about, how does DNA work? Doesn't work when we talk about the movement of celestial bodies. And so the method that you're proposing is already demonstrably inferior. As a matter of fact, scientific methods specifically seek to avoid the pitfalls that you're proposing by not making it about opinion, by not making it about people, and instead appealing to the facts.
And what about those? And Austin, real quick, Austin. And what about those issues where there is not a common sense consensus? Like, for example, the tensile strength of steel. There is a true answer to it under certain conditions. You can, do a Family Feud style method of polling, 100 people were surveyed, top 10 answers on the board, and ask them what the tensile strength of steel is. Unless you've got engineers in there, the numbers are going to be wildly off. Why would you rely upon that as opposed to the scientific method, which has resulted in an actual measurement for that fact?
So let me go back to the example that I gave of like this Buddhist monk meditating and feeling this unifying force that connects all thinking minds and all peoples. That monk is sensing something. There is some aspect of the universe that he's pursuing.
Okay, I muted Austin so that we don't try to talk over each other. I want you to give your example, Austin. The problem is, I don't think, I'll let you give your example, but I don't think that you are addressing this issue straightforward, because we just explained how what you're proposing is not only inferior to science, but science has specifically worked to remove that inferiority and unreliability from it. And now you just go back to, here's a Buddhist monk as a hypothetical. I'm going to let you finish it, but I don't see what your Buddhist monk hypothetical gets us, because what I asked was about a methodology and you're going to an anecdote. So go ahead, but recognize that you're not talking about a methodology. You're just saying, here's what somebody thinks. So go ahead.
So I appreciate you letting me kind of work this out. And it's entirely possible. It's definitely true that I still have to think about this more and crystallize it. But basically what I'm saying, the example that your co-host gave of Family Feud, there would be engineers in there because there are engineers that have conceptualized this. And I'm not saying the scientific method isn't part of this wider perception of capital T truth. But what I am saying is that you can't exclude methods that don't directly correlate to the scientific method. There are biases within the scientific method. There are the people that are using the scientific method are fallible humans. So disregarding the Buddhist monk.
Sorry, I've muted you again because you didn't get to the Buddhist monk, but I want to make sure this is clear. You've now gone from suggesting that you have a method that's better than science to saying there's a method that includes science plus this other stuff, and that we can't exclude that other stuff. Yes, as a matter of fact, we can and exclude bias, opinion. The fact that there will be engineers included in the consensus is false, because it could be that the consensus opinion of uninformed people, of which there will be many more of, is different from the consensus of informed experts, of which there will be fewer. And so this is the antithesis of what you're advocating. Whereas the best consensus should be a consensus of the experts, not of the population, because everybody in the population who's not an expert becomes essentially an outlier opinion, an uninformed guess. But what is this Buddhist monk going to tell us?
Yeah.
So it's hard to get my thoughts in order live on air. So I'll definitely call back in the future. But basically the thing that I'm trying to advocate for is, yes, the scientific method has its purposes and can describe aspects of the truth more reliable than other methods. But there are things that it leaves out because of its biases, because of
like what?
The
like what
it has on it.
Like what? What does science leave out? Because I think we're about to get to the crux of this, because you just admitted that science does this better than other methods. You have not proposed anything that is even close to an actual method, but now you want to knock science for leaving stuff out. So name one thing, just one thing, that science leaves out.
So this relates into the value of truth that I was talking about. So if we were to use the scientific method to say, the example that my friend gave me was, there's an indigenous tribe in the jungle and they can perceive things about their environment that somebody using the scientific method wouldn't be able to do because they have a relationship with the spirits of the jungle. And you can demonstrate their ability to predict these things better using the scientific method.
Hang on, Austin. You just said that the scientific method is better at evaluating their claims.
Right, but it can't demonstrate how they go about what. There's no observable material force that they're interacting with that you could sense with
Austin
the method. That doesn't make it not true.
Austin, you have not demonstrated that there's any real phenomenon here. You've simply said there are people, indigenous people, who have premonitions from the spirits, and science doesn't get to say that that's true or false. Well, congrats, but prove that they're actually getting premonitions and that there's some phenomenon here to explain, because science isn't biased against demonstrating an actual phenomenon. Science is just barred from saying the source of this phenomenon is supernatural. If in fact indigenous people, through whatever means, premonition, tea leaf reading, pulling it out of their butt, were managed to come up with reliable, accurate predictions, then we would acknowledge these people are able to produce reliable, accurate predictions, and we don't know how. But what is the methodology that you are proposing? You've criticized science, saying science has a bias that doesn't account for something. But the example that you gave is something you cannot demonstrate is real. So the time to believe that is after you've demonstrated it's real.
Austin, it sounds like you're speaking in generalities and hypotheticals, a lot of ifs. If there was a group that this indigenous group that had this closeness to nature, that the spirits and what have you, I think you need to get down to brass tacks and give us a very specific example of a group of people who can do something that no one else, that scientists cannot explain, and then show how you know or how you believe that this is a supernatural process. Because I think you're
there's
Go ahead.
okay. There's this simplex duplex phone thing is always a nightmare. So there is a study that my friend showed me. It is peer reviewed, and I'll look up the name of it and call you guys back next week. If you want, I can give you the brief top-down view of
It's what we've been asking for ages. So yeah, what is the study about? What does its purport to show?
So it's a study of mortality in different groups that are going into these South American jungles, and who comes out, who doesn't. The indigenous peoples
Austin,
and in this environment
Austin,
and communicating with
Austin,
yeah.
Your sentence made no sense. You said it was a study about mortality rates in South America and who comes out. That sentence does not present a cogent thought.
the South American jungles, like indigenous people that live there, their mortality rates versus people, scientists, researchers, and their mortality rates. There's a demonstrable difference between those. And I believe that this relationship with these jungle spirits is why.
Okay. Why do you think that the cause is jungle spirits? Do you have any evidence or any way to demonstrate that jungle spirits exist, that they can in fact interact with reality, that they do in fact interact with reality, and that they in fact are the most likely proximate cause of the mortality rates of these indigenous people? What is the justification for any of that?
Oh, huh. Well, that just clicked something in my head because I was using a fallacy. I couldn't think of another way that they would be able to survive in their environment. So therefore, X must be true.
Okay. Problem solved.
Into the show. Okay. Thanks.
Cool.
Yep.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks.
I appreciate you helping me think through this.
No worries. Catch you later. Glad it was helpful.
I was thinking that this was taken down the tack of a kind of an Aristotelian way of looking at nature. Like, I have conceived of a method by which XYZ takes place, and it exists entirely in the mind, and it's logically consistent within itself, but there is absolutely no testing going on to see whether or not there is a reason to believe that any of this is a valid way of thinking. And that's where this Buddhist monk sitting somewhere cooking up ways like was it spiritism and
Spiritualism and
well, there's spiritism too. It's
there's
really big in
animism,
Brazil.
which is the religious notion of spirits that live, around us and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that Austin got to a spot where he's like, well, back to the drawing board.
Yeah, it's frustrating because first of all, we have a report that some indigenous people have a lower mortality rate in some factor. Now, if somebody came to me and said that it is in fact true that there's an indigenous group that has a lower mortality rate or that has never had this disease or whatever else, verify that claim is true. But if we're going to move forward and we want to treat this as interesting, the question then becomes, what are the candidate explanations for that? This is true, by the way, universally. Here's a phenomenon. And then we say, what are the candidate explanations? And therefore, we begin listing things that we know have or believe have some causal relationship between them, and then categorizing and evaluating which of them are more likely. And so if we say, hey, Matt got cancer, and then we say, why did Matt get cancer? Well, he used tobacco, or he inhaled too many carcinogens in general, or he lived near this thing, or this was what his diet was like, or God decided to give him cancer, or the spirits around him gave him cancer. Now, there's a list of candidate explanations. There's been no demonstration that God or spirits should be included, that they could be included, that they're part of any of this. And so the reasonable method is to eliminate them from the list, because there's no reason to think they're true. Evaluate of the rest of the candidate explanations, which one bears the most likely causal connection.
If you want to backstop before you get to spirits, just say the microbiome. It's the microbiome that's responsible for these people's longevity in harsh jungle environments.
Oh, and I love that. I love that,
yeah.
In part because also, if you think about microbiome, every single one of us, yes, all of you out there listening to me, you have creepy crawlies all over you all of the time. There are little things that you are a walking planet of food, and there's living things all over you, and they're crawling. I'm sorry, I'm probably really disturbing somebody, but it's true. And yet we don't think about those. The germ theory of disease, recognizing that there are things that we can't see with the naked eye, which are contributing to disease, is important and significant, not just because we have identified a model for disease, but that we recognize that there's a difference between being able to see something with a naked eye and whether or not it is an actual entity in reality. We know that's true for viruses.
It's a little insulting too. Like the people living in the jungle, right, in these South American locations, they have lived there for tens of thousands of years. They know what plants are dangerous to be around, what animals are dangerous to be around. They know what healing properties exist in certain plants. They've developed a culture of finding where they get their nutrients. And yet, rather than assuming that humans are just intelligent and they know how to keep themselves alive, you go to goblins that exist on the spirit realm that keep them alive, and not foreign interlopers. I don't know. It's that's a little colonialistic in its thinking. I don't think it's intentionally so, but
possibly.
Yeah.
Let's move on. We got a lot more callers. By the way, if you're on hold, I see you in the list, and we're going to get to you as quickly as we can. We appreciate you calling in and waiting. We have Kaden in Washington has a question about, kind of about morality, but I think it seems more like fatalism. Well, welcome to the show, Kaden. How can we help?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
And this is, I guess, a question that you're kind of tired of already, but it's sort of a follow-up on a caller named Paul's question from last week.
Yeah.
He was asking about the value of truth if we're mortal.
Yeah.
You part of your answer, you mentioned things being useful even though they're temporal. You mentioned like a sandwich is useful for my nourishment. A vehicle is useful for my transportation.
Yeah.
If I sound funny, I am a little nervous.
No, but the question here from the call screener that it said you wanted to ask is, what is the value of morality if we're all going to die anyway? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why should you wipe your ass if it's just going to get dirty the next day? Why should you eat a sandwich if you're just going to have to poop it out? Why should you maintain your vehicle if it's just going to end up in a junkyard someday?
Well, I would say because those things are beneficial to me. But
that's the point. You don't think acting morally is beneficial to you and the people around you?
Not always. No, I would argue that a lot of times. I mean, we talk about morality in terms of well-being, but I guess my question is well-being for whom? Because a lot of times I would say that the moral thing to do is detrimental to myself.
Like what?
If I'm hungry, and I don't have food and I, can't find a job or whatever, it would seem to be beneficial to me to steal, but I would argue that that's immoral.
Well, you're being a little myopic. Of course, it's beneficial to you to steal, provided you don't worry about whether or not you get caught. You think getting caught and punished is to your benefit?
Right. So if I think I'm smart enough, sly enough to get away with it,
Are you?
Why
Are you?
not do that?
And does that make it moral just because you can get away with it? Because what you've done is if you've stolen something, you've increased the price of that for everybody else, whether you get caught or not.
Right. But I guess my whole question is if everything is somewhere on this spectrum of, ham sandwich, automobile, animals, people, etc. Like, why do I need to value people in a different way than I value a ham sandwich or an automobile? Why?
Because people are going to take actions that impact your life, whereas a ham sandwich isn't. Is this really that difficult? I don't mean to be a dick, but I have difficulty believing this is a serious question. In the same way that I don't understand people who don't see the value of truth, I don't understand people who don't see the value of morality. And when your question is, what is the value of morality if we're all going to die anyway? It's because morality impacts our life right now, and our life right now matters even if we're going to die someday.
Yeah, and you recognize, Kaden, that you live in a world filled with people, and you know that certain actions that you take are going to be that other individuals are going to respond to you. Like if you start swinging your fist around, someone's going to either back away everyone's going to back away until someone tackles you, calls the cops, and locks you up. So there are direct consequences for those actions. And I think we're not perfect at discerning what is the action to take in any given moment. I think we all kind of know what we should do, but let's say you're starving hungry and you think you can get away with it and you're going to die. You're going to choose the immediate good of eating a loaf of bread, Jean Valjean, over just dying in the street. But that you also don't want to have a world where people have to steal to survive. I really don't understand the problem because it's just useful. We all kind of recognize that truth and morality is useful more than it's some objective thing to be attained.
I want to just one side thing real quick, Kaden. Because the question you asked is, what's the moral value if we're all going to die anyway? So let's assume for a second that nobody's going to die. Does morality somehow become more relevant? What if everybody lives for 1 billion years or 1 million years or 1,000 years? At what point, what length of lifespan is relevant to your question such that this length of lifespan makes morality valuable to you, whereas you don't think that that's true under a normal human lifespan?
I wouldn't say it just has to do with longevity.
Then you asked a poorly worded question, because your question is, what is the value of morality if we're all going to die? Would you agree that whether or not we're going to die is irrelevant to whether or not morality has value?
No, I mean it's part of it, because for me it's, as a Christian.
Then I'm going to move on to other callers, because I don't feel like continuing a conversation with someone who's trying to defend contradictory positions. So thanks for the time.
I mean,
you can't simultaneously defend that it's about, whether or not we're going to die and then suggest that it's not. Come up with a better phrasing of the question, and Johnny and I'd be happy to address it.
Yeah. Who else we have? Well,
we've got a number of callers. It's frustrating though, because this whole thing about what's the value of truth keeps coming up over and over again. And it's incredibly frustrating to me because of the world that we live in, where there are people who seem to live in a different reality. They don't share truth. And I'm wondering if the people calling, we talk about what the process is. You and I have talked privately. We didn't talk about it on the show. What the process is of people becoming radicalized, not just buying into conspiracy theories or false beliefs, but doing it to the point where you could be, actuated as an arm of some sort of ideology. And I wonder if the questions about the value of truth and morality, like this is the first time anybody said, what good is morality if we're going to die? To me, that question is like literally one of the most ridiculous, nonsensical questions I've been asked, because morality is about our life. The fact that our life ends doesn't change what's moral.
There's a remember when I was younger and I was struggling with death, you know, my little soapbox. And I was like, okay, I could be the world's greatest villain, or I could be the world's greatest hero. And then the sun's going to expand and burn up the earth. And there will be no evidence whatsoever that I healed the sick and donated to charity, or that I killed everybody in Australia single-handedly. Good luck with that. So there's no meaning to my actions in some eternal sense. And maybe there is no meaning to my actions in some eternal sense, but there sure is for me now. If I want to be running from the law, if I want to look into the faces of those Australians that I'm strangling to death, if I want to
wait, Johnny.
Yeah.
Why are you strangling Australians? I thought we were supposed to try to be calm today, and you're
sorry.
immediately talking about killing people on an entire continent. I mean,
hypothetical.
And by the way, I'd like to point out that the judge is Australian.
I'm buttering her up right now. Okay. Cause I'm not that person that would try to hand murder a bunch of Aussies. Okay.
You just be the person who would sanction it and let somebody else do the work. Is that?
No, I just sit back and watch and then wait to divinely intervene after it was done.
It's too much
time. Yeah.
Let's dig into some more calls. I want to say Sam in Texas. How are you? Welcome to the show. Thanks for waiting.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Just wanted to say I'm a huge fan. Love you guys. My husband got me into the show earlier last year, and so I've got a quick question. I hope it shouldn't take up too much time. But
sure. Thank you for the kind words. Go ahead. Let's see if we can help at all.
So I actually quit my job at a mega church in Texas, DFW area. It's one of the biggest churches in the country. A lot of kind of weird stuff going on internally, but more personally, I had a friend who I worked in the audio video development, kind of like the live production team. And a good friend of mine, I'm atheist, and I grew up in this church, and like from when I was really, really young, and had this, process of determining, what I valued as truth, and came to the conclusion of, atheism and all that stuff. But it's not important. Basically, a good friend of mine who's still working there is kind of on the edge of believing and not believing, and a big kind of moment. He recently was at a service with his family. And it was like a prophetic service kind of thing. And one of the pastors said a prophetic word to his brother that was like really, I guess, on the nose, and was really accurate. And there was supposed to be no way he knew these kind of things. His little brother was dealing with a bunch of bullies. And basically this pastor said a bunch of stuff about how, like, oh, you're dealing with bullies. And he was kind of specific. And this kind of made my friend start doubting, well, maybe there is a God, because how could he know this stuff? Like this pastor was coming from the approach of, God told me these things about you, And so we've been talking about this, and I'm trying to figure out how to approach this topic with him without, discrediting the importance of it, because, he took it to heart. He's very kind of close with his brother. And so it's a very kind of personal topic with him. And he wants to, I guess he's trying to like find the truth in it and trying to figure out how,
sure,
he could have known. And I was trying to figure out, like, well, psychics also do this sort of thing, and there's not truth to that. Like, do you believe in psychics? And then he was like, well, maybe I don't know, And so it's kind of a question of how to approach this topic with him.
I'm going to let Johnny answer, and then I have something that may be non-standard as a reply at the end. But
I'd really like to know what the specifics were, because it sounds like a cold reading to me. Although I'll be honest. You see kids and you can tell, all right, that kid's a nerd. That kid gets picked on. That kid's a bully. That kid is a know-it-all. And also, I mean, was this child a member of this person's church? Does they're talking that the one child gets picked on? I mean, there's so many ways that that pastor could have said the right word without being prophetic. And I mean, I guess I'd like to know how specific was it? Because, you know, someone said you read your fortune or your horoscope in the newspaper, and you bring your own meaning to those hollow general words. I'd like to know how specific were those words. Do you know?
Yeah, and it actually gets a bit more kind of weird because my friend, his father is a big member in the church. He's one of the higher ups in this one campus, and so it's not, I guess, too far out of the question to have this father talk with these other pastors and all that kind of stuff. It was most specifically, and so this is more of a sensitive topic as well. But this, my friend's brother, his little brother, he's dealing with wanting to come out as trans. And so it's a very kind of touchy subject, because that's what he was getting bullied for in school, with being more feminine and wanting to kind of be himself, and express himself how, he wants to be expressed, and how he wants to be viewed. And this pastor kind of, was able to, and it wasn't a pastor that their family knew specifically. It was actually at a different campus completely. But it was still one of these moments where, my friend, he was saying, well, my brother, was dealing with this stuff, and there's no way this pastor could have known this, and all that,
No, I don't buy it. Gender expression notwithstanding, this pastor could have read something, could have seen this person, could have overheard a conversation, could have seen the way this individual carried themselves, and said, that looks like it might be a person struggling with transgender issues in this world we live in. And I just throw that out there. Yeah. And if I'm right, then I'm right. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
The notion that someone could be acting timid as a tip that they're likely being bullied, or they're suffering some stress. And plus, in the course of the conversation, here's my recommendation. First of all, Sam, they can come to one of my magic shows, and I will do more impressive predictions and readings than any preacher is going to do without investigation. But they don't have to do that. I'm not quite ready to announce the specifics, but there is an incredibly strong chance, like I'd say 90% plus, that in the next month and a half, one of the world's greatest living mentalists will be right here on this program. Literally wrote the book on cold reading, and it might be a good week to have that person tune in, because for me, if I run across a preacher who's saying things that we don't think they could know through normal reading, normal processes, it may be cold reading, it may be that they have some inside information. And I know pastors who share information, behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, if somebody tells me something about myself that I don't think they should know, am I willing to bet my life that it is more likely God than some form of deception? I mean, this gets right back to David Hume. If I'm told that somebody rose from the dead, I have to ask myself, is it more likely that this person is deceived or attempting to deceive than that their claim is true? And so, no, it's not Darren Brown, but you're not far off. But the claim that they're getting information, this is a ploy that's, as you noted, psychics use, that cold readers use, that magicians use, mentalists use. Right. This is what con artists use. This is how every manipulative narcissist on the planet who wants to worm their way into your life works. And I think that religion has a tendency to prop those individuals up, because if you are speaking in a way that doesn't resonate with anybody in your congregation, you're not going to keep your job very long. And so the people who are best at building those congregations are the ones who know how to connect charismatically and with apparent facts.
Right. And this is a friend of yours, right? The friend's brother was the one who was dealing with perhaps coming out as trans. It was a friend, right?
Yeah, and let me be more clear. I don't know if I made it abundantly clear. I don't believe that this is a prophetic word. I'm just trying to get kind of how empathetic standpoint, a friend who is, on kind of teetering on this edge of believing and not believing, how do you approach it in a sense, like say, without just saying like, hey, you're being duped, you're a dumbass, like instead of saying that, how do you,
I get it, Sam. And I think that I want to know also, is this friend of yours, do they have this kind of attitude in the other aspects of their life? Does this friend believe in magical healing crystals or the power of prophecy and other aspects of life? And if this person is maybe walking away from metaphysical beliefs that are unfounded, is this the last hurrah because they have fallen under the influence of a charismatic megachurch person, and they love the community and they love to be associated with what could be thought of as success and flourishment, prosperity. They might just work their way out of it on their own.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you show them examples of something more impressive, like I'll just go ahead and say it because, we've already talked to him. Yeah. Yes. As a matter of fact, since somebody in chat already mentioned it, my friend who's going to be on the show, almost certainly, we're still finalizing details, is Ian Rowland, who wrote a book called the Cold Facts, or the Full Facts Book of Cold Reading. And I just find it, the fake psychics and the preachers, the people who are quite often trying to do some cold reading things, I just find that if you take somebody out of the church, plop them down in front of a proper, good mentalist, and loads of my friends are some of the best mentalists on the planet. Watching what they do is an order of magnitude more impressive than any preacher has ever done without like background checks or a listening device in their ear, as Peter Popoff did. And so if I had a friend that was like, maybe there's something to this God thing, I would show them mind readers on Penn and Teller, and just remind them that if this wasn't a magic show, that if this exact same effect had been done in the context of a church, would they still be attributing it to God? That's the best I could do, is come up with those examples, which I'm sure is what you already thought of, because you started off with psychics.
Yeah. And maybe don't come on too strong, because then they might be put in a defensive position.
Yeah.
So when it comes up organically, address it then.
Here's your preacher and 3 mentalists. At least one of them is faking and doesn't actually have supernatural powers and isn't being guided by a God. Please identify and bet your life and your life savings on which one is not faking, if any.
Right. Yeah. And I guess for more context, the biggest thing that's compelling to him is that at any given point during these services, the auditoriums are fairly large, so they can have anywhere between upwards of 600 to 1,000 people in an auditorium at once. So for him, that was the most compelling thing, was that he was picked out of that amount of people, and then that reading was given. But
you know what else that means?
You guys.
That also means there's 600 to 1,000 gossips and concerned people who might have spoken to that pastor as well. Hey, my friend's going to be here.
Could you just take a survey of the people in that church, and whatever the consensus is, and that's the truth?
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. Thanks a lot for the call, Sam. I appreciate it. Hopefully, let us know how it goes. And if you manage to dissuade your friend, or if they double down or whatever, I'm interested in kind of what happens next.
Sure. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys taking my calls. It was extremely helpful. Thanks, you guys.
Appreciate it, Sam. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, so we weren't going to announce Ian Rowland, and it's not a done deal yet, but Ian and I have known each other for several years, and he was incredibly kind to me when I was in the UK. Every time I've been to the UK, but I'd flown into London at Heathrow, and my flight, I was doing an event with Dawkins and Harris at the Orpheum, and my flight out was not from Heathrow, it was from Gatwick, and I was clueless and had no idea how to get there.
I've done that.
And Ian had come to the show the night before, and I messaged him, and I'm like, I'm completely lost. And he's like, don't worry about it. Just get in a cab, get to I think it's the Victoria train station. And he took a train and met me there, and then rode the train. It's like 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes with me from out to Gatwick. And we just had a wonderful talk the whole time. It's great.
Matt, we've been taking some really nice calls, some really smart people looking to try to figure out the world. Do we have any, Exodus 21 people? Do we have any biblical slavery is morally not only permissible but mandatory? Any of those kind of callers in the queue? Because I want to test your Zen, man.
Possibly, and I'm all in favor of testing my Zen, but I need to take this call. This is Matthew. Thanks for waiting. Evidently, you've had some sort of, I don't know, epiphany or something since the last time we spoke. So welcome back to the show. How can we help?
Yeah, it's funny that you actually mentioned Exodus, because that's exactly what we had discussed for a little bit last time we talked. And we were, I don't know if you remember, but we were talking a little bit about Christian worldview and things like that. And I remember the last thing you told me on the call was you wanted to, I didn't have an answer. You said, well, when you get an answer, call back. And so a couple weeks later, I think I got an answer for you, Matt.
Okay, but I don't recall the question.
Yeah, can you refresh the recollection of the
I'll
audience?
tell you what, you just tell the story with your answer however the hell you want to, and we'll just wait.
Last time on Atheist Experience.
So, I was a Christian. I was indoctrinated, and we discussed a lot of topics, but the last topic we discussed was about Christian worldview and why I thought it was correct. And then you kind of made some holes. I think you said something like, why, I can't remember. I just watched it. I just recapped it like 2 hours ago too. But anyways, the basis was you made some holes, and you should come back when you find out, And so since then, I've been doing a lot of research. I've been talking with my other Christian friends. I've been talking to some atheists. I've watched more atheist channels like Cosmic Skeptic, Rationality Rules, and my answer now is, you're right. I mean, there just aren't any excuses. There's no alternative facts. The facts are the facts. And I told my mom about this. She's the closest person to me, and she's heavily Christian. And we kind of had a dispute about that. But, you told me to call back when I had an answer, and so I thought I'd give a call. I just want to say thank you. You really opened my eyes with that call. And even though you're a little harsh, at the end of it, the results, the proof showed itself. And I just really appreciate you guys and really changed the way I view things. I feel a lot better now, to be honest.
I apologize. I'm slightly overwhelmed because this doesn't happen. Normally, when I hear from somebody after the fact that, something I've said has changed their mind or convinced them, it's usually in private. It's not that people are going to call in and say, oh yeah. And we've already heard today another caller who called in with an idea, and through the process of the discussion realized, oh, here was my mistake and I've changed my mind. And that's great. But kudos to you, Matthew, because there's no upside to you calling in to tell me, especially if you thought I was harsh, that I changed your mind. And so good for you for not only changing your mind and for being open to talk about it. And now I just hope that you continue to share that stuff. And as you come up with, other people who have similar bad ideas, that maybe you do it better. Maybe you do it where nobody walks away feeling that somebody was harsh. So thank you, fuck ton, for being incredibly gracious and letting me know. So I'm thrilled you called back in and you waited all this time. So
yeah, thank you,
Matthew.
And now you've got the rest of your life to build for yourself. What are you going to do with this epiphany? How are you going to affect the world? How are your relationships going to change? What is your place in the world, and how are you going to make it meaningful? And what do you want your legacy to be? And you get to handcraft that. So there's a lot of roads you can go from here. There are some toxic atheists out there that want to burn the world down once they've maybe come to this realization that some of the things that they believed were false, then everything's false. These red pill types. You don't have to be one of those people. You can critically examine the world around you from a perspective of skepticism and science and compassion and humanism. And you can be a sounding board for those who are in the same place that you were before the last call. You can be a safety net for those who are feeling like they're in free fall. You can be a sarcastic person on the internet. You can troll people. You can do all these different things. It's all in your hands. So think about where you want to go with this.
Yeah, and drop us a line and catch up from time to time, Matthew. And if you need anything else, if we can be of more help at some point, we'll try. But I got a handful of other theistic callers that I know you would like us to try to maybe talk some sense into as well. So is there anything else we can help you with today?
No, I might call back another time, but I'll just sit back and enjoy the show. And just wanted to give you a quick call to let you know that that's my answer.
No, I appreciate it more than you know. I'd give you my number so we could just sit down and chat if it weren't for the fact that we're on live TV right now, because while this has happened, it hasn't happened anywhere near often enough considering how many years we've been doing this. But I appreciate it greatly, Matthew. Thanks so much. You're a truly upstanding person, and I look forward to hearing from you again.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Absolutely. We have 3 theists and an agnostic left as the last 4 callers with 20 minutes left in the show. Some of the calls are going to be shorter than others. Do you have a preference as to whether, like, we go in what order of the 4 should we place our agnostic? I don't know, but Johnny's evidently muted. So,
oh shoot, sorry, agnostic last.
Okay, we'll do the agnostic last. So we got Tom in Missouri trying to find a non-supernatural explanation for how Christianity came about. Is that the question, or kind of the line of thought? Welcome.
Yes. Hi. Yeah, I'm really trying hard to determine a non-supernatural explanation for the phenomenon known as Christianity, because I believe that will have serious implications for how I live the rest of my life, which I appear to only have one chance to live.
I think I can knock this out of the park in 45 seconds.
Make it so.
Have you looked for non-supernatural explanations for any other religion?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And did you find them?
Yep.
For all of them that you investigated?
Yeah. Yeah, I have.
And none of those natural explanations apply to Christianity?
Well, they do. I think they should.
Okay, so you have found naturalistic explanations for other religions, which you also think should apply to Christianity. However, let's imagine we had no naturalistic explanation for Christianity. Does that mean a supernatural explanation is warranted?
Not necessarily.
Right. So what you've done is attempted to shift the burden of proof. You said, I'm going to stick with Christianity, or I'm going to keep giving Christianity the benefit of the doubt until someone can come up with a naturalistic explanation, even though you've already admitted that you're fine, you recognize naturalistic explanations. And the easiest naturalistic explanation is that people can be wrong.
Of course. Definitely.
So instead of looking for a naturalistic explanation of Christianity, what you should be doing is looking for a reason that Christianity is true before you believe it, and not shifting the burden of proof by suggesting what you already know to be true. And what you already know to be true is that there are naturalistic explanations that can account for Christianity. How robust they are and whether they account for every single thing, you might have to have several different naturalistic explanations. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if there was none. That doesn't mean that Christianity is true or believable, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That was a little more than 45 seconds, but I got to run because we got other callers. So
it's a metric 45 seconds.
I don't know how long it was, but I think it was close to 45 seconds. Did you actually time me, Johnny?
No.
Okay.
What's up? What's next?
We got Priest in the Bahamas who wants to tell us that God is an intelligent being and the phenomena of the mind suggest design. So welcome, Priest. You're on with Johnny and Matt.
Hey, Priest.
Hello. How you doing?
Great.
Yeah.
What you got? Please explain yourself. Account for yourself. What do you mean by that?
Firstly, I'm trying to get an understanding of what you believe, because I've just come across this channel, and I've listened a bit, and of course I don't agree with anything you say. So I'm just
you don't agree with anything we say?
With nothing?
Hello?
You don't agree with anything, Priest? Nothing? Not one thing?
No, I'm not an atheist, so I'm just trying to find out.
Yeah, but atheism only addressed whether or not we're convinced that there's a God. We're not convinced that there's a God, but you're saying that you don't agree with us on anything. So
hold on. Let me ask a question. So
okay.
If you're not convinced that there's a God, what about people who are convinced around the world, the vast majority of mankind?
Yeah, they would need to demonstrate the truth of that proposition before anybody else should believe them.
Oh, definitely. I absolutely believe that.
All right.
Cool. So do you believe there's a God?
Oh, I absolutely do. I don't believe in Christianity.
I don't. It doesn't matter to me which God. How would you demonstrate that your belief is rationally justified?
Okay. In believing in a God, you want me to tell you how I rationally justify my belief?
I'd love to. I've been waiting 15 years for anybody to rationally justify a belief in God. Actually, longer than that, but I've been doing the show for that long.
Well, you've reached the right place. I certainly can rationally justify that.
Wait, right. you want to put a bet on that?
I'm glad I was on the show when this happened.
But now it's cool because now Johnny and I are going to stop right now. Please demonstrate the truth of your God.
Okay, I will. I absolutely will. Firstly, the human mind. Secondly, the eye, and how it works.
Priest.
Thirdly, hold on, I'm not finished. Thirdly,
no, Priest, I'm pausing you for a very good reason. I don't want to have to mute you so that we're not trying to talk over each other. You didn't present any argument. You just stated words like the human mind. That is not an argument, nor is it evidence for a proposition. You have to make a case to say.
I am making a case.
No, sir. Priest, my apologies, but you were not. You said the mind, and then you went on to a completely different subject. So pick one and make the case.
We're going to get into the case. Hold on, let me start again then.
How about you stop telling me to hold on when I'm trying to steer this conversation so that it doesn't turn out so poorly for you?
Don't be afraid.
Pick one of your arguments and demonstrate that it ties to a God.
Okay. Firstly, the human mind and the functionality of the human mind is best explained by intelligence. I firmly believe that the human mind is capable of doing amazing things. I firmly believe that the phenomenon that is the human mind came from another intelligence.
Okay, so
I believe that, and also I believe
Priest.
I'm not even finished, and you don't want to hear the argument.
Priest, I'm sorry, but we're short on time. I'm trying to tell you that what you just presented is not an argument at all. Do you understand how an argument is? That it is a list of statements that connect facts, agreed upon facts that lead to a conclusion. All you've just said is, I believe. All you said was that you believe this. I know what you believe. I want to know the why.
Yeah, show your work.
Okay. Okay, be patient. I'm trying to work with you. Maybe I can help you.
No, sir, I don't think you are trying to work with me. Please define, what God do you believe in? Please define the characteristics of that God so that we can start there and figure out what you're going to argue for.
Let's start there. I want to start there, but if you'd let the guest speak. Firstly.
Okay, now I'm going to mute you. Priest, I am maintaining my zen and my cool, but I've given you several opportunities and you don't start off doing the thing you need to do. You just start off complaining about how I'm not letting you do the thing you do. I'm going to unmute you in a second. And when I do so, do not start with a preamble. Don't start with something whiny about how you haven't been able to finish. Take that opportunity, embrace it, define your God, and argue for your God's existence. Because if you do anything either than those two things, I will hang up on you and go to a caller who wants to actually define their God and defend it. I'm unmuting you now.
I feel strongly, right? The evidence shows that the phenomenon of creation, the phenomenon of the how many elements are in the periodic table, I'm not sure at the moment. I feel that they came about.
Okay.
They were designed.
Priest, thank you very much for your call. I'll be hanging up on you now because I'm not interested in you telling me what you believe. I specifically said define your God and defend it. I'm going to hang up on you, and you're welcome to call back some other week, at which time you can define your God and then defend it. Because I don't need people calling in to say, I feel. I don't care how you feel. I don't care so much what you are convinced is real. I want you to actually make a case for it. So moving on, we have Mark in Florida with information about a rapture that evidently us atheists have hope for. What's going on, Mark?
Now we're cooking.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, Mark. What's going on?
Yes. My belief is in a future rapture because I believe that I think there's still hope for the atheists in the future about the rapture because Jesus promised us he's coming back in a rapture. I know you don't believe in Jesus, but I believe in him because he's my savior. But
why?
Yeah, why? I'm glad that you like something, but why?
Huh?
Why do you believe that Jesus is your savior? And why should we believe that Jesus is your savior and our savior too?
Well, but basically, he is God in form. He is God in the flesh. He died for you and me.
Yeah, that's a claim, but how do you know that that's true, Mark? Because I believe that eventually Morgoth from the Lord of the Rings is going to make his way out of chaos and is going to initiate the end of the second song of the Ainur. But why should I believe in your story?
Well, you should tell Matt he's to be a minister.
No, I'm asking you, Mark. I'm asking you.
I'm not even sure what that sentence was. I mean, Johnny's asking you questions about why you believe. I don't know why my name would even enter this.
I believe in God because he's given me a life. Well, I recently here because
what has God given you, Mark, and how do you know that God gave it to you?
Every morning you wake up, there's evidence that God is alive. God is real. I know it's real.
No, Mark. You said, Mark.
We work on faith and by sight.
Mark, you said that God has given you things, and what I asked was, what has God given you, and how do you know that God gave it to you?
Well, it's by faith. It's because we live by faith. I know I cannot show you evidence, but my evidence.
Is there anything that you couldn't believe based upon faith?
That's the problem. We believe by faith, even though we don't have it, but we believe it.
If you believe something based on faith, can you be wrong?
No, I cannot be wrong because I wanted to. According to what the Bible says,
Mark, I'm going to do you the biggest favor I've done, which is I'm going to tell you that we're going to hang up, and that you need to go look at this because you are saying that you don't have a good reason. So you say you believe by faith. We asked you for a good reason. You didn't give it. You said you take it on faith. Johnny asked you if there was anything you couldn't believe on faith. And before you actually even answer that, I asked you if a belief you held on faith could be wrong. And you said no. And that is ridiculously not remotely in the ballpark of reasonable or true. And rather than letting you sit here and keep embarrassing yourself, I would like you to go off and think about, because you realize there are plenty of people who believe in gods that you don't believe in, and their view is based on faith as well, which means people can in fact be wrong about something that they take as a tenet of faith. And if you're just going to sit here and say, I believe that God exists and I take it on faith and I can't be wrong, then I have no reason to have a conversation with you because I'm not interested in people who won't acknowledge that they could be wrong. Thanks.
Mark, that's the Zen version of no, you're done.
Yes, that is absolutely the Zen version of no, you're done. And I can do it quickly without breaking his Zen. But for today's final call, I am excited because Ronaldo in Brazil, thank you very much. We're going to talk a little bit about the burden of proof. You are on with Johnny and Matt. How can we help?
Hey.
Hi, Matt. Thank you. I appreciate. I live in Brazil, and you have a lot of fans here in my country.
I've heard that, and I really want to come to Brazil someday and meet everybody and hang out. I get asked all the time. Unfortunately, it's not just the pandemic that's keeping me from coming down. There's a lot of other reasons I haven't been there. But please, welcome to the show. How can we help you out?
Okay. In fact, I began to watch your show when I was trying to learn English to improve my pronunciation, my listening, and I turned into atheist because so much I watched your program. I turned out.
Nice.
My question today is because you have an old man called Olavo de Carvalho. He's the guru of our president Jair Bolsonaro, and Jair Bolsonaro some kind imitates your almost ex-president Trump. And he said just last week that something like the burden of proof is on the atheist because God was not invented. He is something natural in our society, in our group of men. Then I think they put the atheist like someone who is accusing the theism to be wrong. Then this would switch the burden of proof. I would like to ask you what to think about it. His name is Olavo de Carvalho. What I said was his words, in fact. It's not my words. He said that the burden of proof is on the atheist because it's a religion, some kind of natural. The idea of a God is something natural.
So this is a spiritual advisor to Bolsonaro?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Bolsonaro is a shit stain on the collective consciousness of humanity. But
I tell you, I understand the sentiment here, and it's, you know, I want to make sure that we don't get trapped in the language, because I think the question, the position that's being stated is that because everybody, or because so many people believe in a God and are convinced that they have good reason, that the burden of proof is on the atheist to show that God doesn't exist. That's simply not true. And it's not true for anything, not just, you know, like, for example, if the overwhelming majority of people believed that vaccines cause autism, it's not necessarily up to us to prove that they don't, even though we have. It may just be enough to say your belief that vaccines don't cause autism is in conflict with the available evidence. You haven't made your burden of proof. The truth is, theists, people who believe in a God, are claiming that a God exists, and they have a burden of proof. If an atheist says that God does not exist, that atheist has in fact also adopted a burden of proof, because any positive claim you make, God exists, God doesn't exist, vaccines cause autism, the moon is made of green cheese. It doesn't matter whatever the statement, whenever you make a positive statement, you have adopted a burden of proof. You may not want to meet it, but default atheism, the default atheist position is not, I'm convinced there is no God. It is, I am not yet convinced that there is a God. And so as long as we're talking about that, if that person you're talking to is suggesting that strong atheists, the ones who say there is no God, have a burden of proof, they're right. They do have a burden of proof. So do Christians. For the people who say, I am not yet convinced that Bigfoot is real. I am not yet convinced the Loch Ness Monster is real. I am not yet convinced that fairies are real. I am not yet convinced that a God is real. They don't have a burden of proof because they're not claiming a fact. They are rejecting an assertion for which a burden of proof hasn't been met.
And Ronaldo, what I heard there was that God is a naturalistic explanation. That sounds like a claim to me, unless I heard you wrong.
I think it was that God was natural, which is like an intuitive. People just know God exists.
Yeah.
Nobody invented the theory of God. That's right. Why the burden of proof is on the accuser, the atheist. Nobody invented the theory of God. So the burden of proof is on the accuser. He said, it's not what I think. No. Doesn't make sense, but I'd like to hear from you, Matt, what you have to say about it.
That is false, even if a God exists, because we know for sure that a human being first conceived of God, even if God exists, because that conception of God, the character, their abilities, and everything else is the concept must evolve, or it must come from a mind. And without demonstrating that it first came from some other mind, Occam's razor demonstrates that we must look at the first mind capable of this level of conception. And it should be some ancestor of the human, of the modern human, that first conceived, hey, I can do things. I can run fast. That person's faster. I can hide. That person's better at hiding. Maybe there's a super person who can do all of these things. But without a time machine, neither one of us are ever going to make any headway there. So it's not just if you said people invented God, you would be adopting a burden of proof. But if you said, I am not convinced that this God is real, how can you demonstrate that this isn't just an invention of human beings? You're questioning. You're not meeting a burden of proof. I hope that clears it up, Ronaldo, but did that help out?
Okay. Yeah, you helped me a lot. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you, Ronaldo.
I'd like to thank you, all your staff, all your co-hostess that worked with you, Don Bay, Tracy, Johnny, etc. I
thank you very much, Ronaldo. That's sweet.
Come to Brazil to debate here. I would like to maybe to learn Portuguese. Maybe it would be better to make a debate here in Brazil.
I don't think I'm going to learn Portuguese sufficiently to do a debate, but if you show up on my Twitch stream sometime, you can catch me playing GeoGuessr. And I like having people from all over the world because I'll be plopped down somewhere in this game. It puts you down in Google Street View and you have to figure out where in the world you are. And I have difficulty sometimes recognizing the difference between Spanish and Portuguese, just like on a street sign. And so it'd be nice to have somebody around saying, hey, I live in Brazil. Your map is in Brazil right now, man.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Ronaldo.
You have a lot of fun.
Oh, Ronaldo got dropped right at the end, but thank you. So first of all, hey, Johnny, how you doing? Johnny's camera. Johnny's camera
I'm
just
doing
went
great.
out. So you tried to unmute his mic and almost shut down his whole camera.
You know what I'm doing.
That's awesome. First of all, thanks so much for doing the show this weekend, man. I always love when you're around. But a special note of thanks to the crew. And I know we already put the crew cam up. There's been a lot of stuff going on lately. I'm just, so Katie and Greg have been working hard. They've been taking suggestions. We've got guests coming in. We are working on other things that we can improve this year because these shows didn't used to be virtual. These shows used to take place at our building. And someday in the future, that may happen again. But what we've learned throughout this is that's not essential. Because of Vern, Greg, and Katie, and all of our volunteers and the mods and the people working that tech stuff behind the scene, and oh my, there are people that I don't want to name because I'm not sure they're comfortable with their names out. There's a lot of people working behind the scenes on this show to make it a reality for Johnny and I just to show up and, run off at the mouth. Whether we end up doing this show in the future at some point from the building or we keep it virtual, I want to say that while 2020 was a hot mess and 2021 is continuing to be pretty hot and pretty messy, I've enjoyed the lessons that we've learned over the past year doing these shows and recognizing that we can have remote guests. I think that it's done a lot to change the nature of the show a little, but definitely boost it in many regards. And so thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Thank you to everybody who's supported. Click the donate link at the top or is a Patreon supporter, a member, something along those lines. And please continue to keep yourself safe. And I'll stick with the statement that I made earlier. If you were planning on going to the inauguration, why not just stay home? I think that is the best way to look after the United States, to follow the guidelines, to recognize that the true time to party is after we've come out of the pandemic, when we've restored democracy and when we have healed a number of wounds. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
What will it take for you to start